Hello.
Hello there.
How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. How's it doing with you, Mick?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Thanks for willing to do this, Mick.
Of course.
You know, I want to be honest with you. I've been
hmm
knowing all about you ever since those two YouTube shows that I've seen, the Hazbin Hotel and of
Ah,
course Dragon Ball Z Abridged. And and since I'm beginning to look up who you really are, your real name Mick Lauer, I begin to notice that not only do you appear in those, but you appear in a lot of anime I've beginning to know of for years. And I've got to
yeah.
say, you have a magnificent voice to be part of a lot of anime, you know? And this the
Thank you.
truth.
First, but I gotta just real quick. It's Mick Lauer.
Mick
Just,
Lauer,
just, yeah. It's not that big of a deal. I just wanted to get it out of the way at the beginning.
my apologies.
Don't. It's okay. I trust me. I've heard all sorts of iterations of the name.
That's what most people usually go with, you know?
Yeah.
It's it's sort of like that. But anyway, I got many questions I wanted to ask you.
Ask away, man. Whatever you got. I got a few at some point, I'm sure, but for now, this is your show, so you rock and roll.
All right then. Tell me, how is it like being a voice actor in many animated projects?
It's good. I think in the beginning, when it was first happening, there was this initial excitement of just being involved, like in the community and being a part of a lot of projects or some projects that I knew of prior, but at least a lot of projects that are in the wheelhouse of my interests, like animation and stuff like that. Over time, um, that hasn't changed. The excitement is definitely still there, but I don't know if it's because I've been doing it for a while. I definitely get a little bit, I'm just being honest. I definitely get a little bit I really part of this one, um, which to be frank, as an actor, is never really our place. I mean, we can want to be in whatever, but um, I don't know. There's so many talented people and so many capable voice actors that it's like, if there's a project you really want to be a part of, and for some reason you're not a part of it, it's hard to feel bad about it only because you know that other people are going to do a great job. Um, but to answer your question, it's always wonderful. It's so fun, especially if there's a project I don't know is going to be super fun, and then it just ends up being an amazing experience. Um, and then I end up wanting to learn more about it. Like I did Ultraman Z. I didn't know a whole lot about Ultraman. I've grown up with it. I've known about it in the peripheries, but I've never really learned about the lore and all that kind of stuff. And being a part of it kind of requires a certain amount of research. Again, I'm not a pro at it, but I'm definitely a lot more interested in it. So that's a fun aspect of being a part of so many different projects, is that you learn about certain, intellectual properties that you were not necessarily initially interested in. Um, and you find new things to love.
Interesting. Which leads me to the most important question.
Yeah.
How did you get into voice acting?
So I went to school for acting in college, which was definitely something my parents were not super amped about initially. Um, and after that, I tried to get into theater. I was part of a theater group with some colleagues from school, and we did some really cool stuff. Unfortunately, in terms of what everybody's goals were and just kind of like where everybody's, the course of everybody's life, we kind of branched out and did our own things. But ultimately for me, I discovered that I did not love the environment. There's good and bad people everywhere, and I felt like the acting community was super duper competitive, and a lot of times we'd be on stage and it was a lot less about performers telling a story, and it felt a lot more like performers trying to get a good review or trying to get an agent, and it just wasn't I didn't feel like all of our goals were aligned. Not in the theater group. In the theater group, everybody was great. I think we were all kind of that, not bohemian, but we were definitely like artists, you know, like we're going to make art and it's going to be important, which I love. I think that's really important. But just in terms of the industry, I didn't love it. So I kind of distanced myself from it slowly. You know, I started auditioning less and less. And during that time, in order to pay bills, I had been doing graphic design. Eventually, just as the tides go, graphic design ended up being the primary focus. And I ran a company with my ex-wife for over a decade of doing web design, graphic design, which I also loved. I love designing stuff too. During that time, though, it had been probably, I don't know, 5-6 years since I'd ever been on a stage or filmed anything. And my ex-wife was like, you know what? You've got all this pent up performance energy. She then signed me up for a voice acting class with Edge Studio, which I believe is still around in New York. And I think they have branches all over the country. And from that first initial voiceover audit that I did, they seemed to think there was some potential there. And yeah, so I started taking classes. I was actually trained by Jay Snyder. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is the voice of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I believe the original Knuckles, or one of the original Knuckles. Great guy, super talented. And I was very blessed to have him as one of my introductions into character voice acting.
Wow. So that's how you got into voice acting, because
Mhm.
of the things you've been experiencing for the last few years. And web designing, that's very awesome. And you taking classes, to tell you the truth, I too am also taking voice acting classes, you know.
Yeah, where are you taking?
Let's just say I've been taking through some of them, I'm beginning to know it through Real Voice LA, through Vax Tracks West, and then on the mic training. But anyway, this is the questions about your characters. But
Sure.
what was your first ever character you played as in for animation way before you got into many others?
The very first one was Roku from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. That was back in New York in 2013. I believe that was for it was a 4 Kids dub, which I know people have opinions about 4 Kids, but it had a lot of great people and I had a great time.
Wow. Roku from
Yeah, you know what?
Yu-Gi-Oh!
No, you know what's really funny
What's so
is
funny?
do you know who Chris Niosi is?
I've known who he is. He's one of
That
the
sounds ominous.
he's one of the original actors who does in who's the original voice of Kawaki before Michael Shoabi took over, and he's the original voice of Byleth, and he's in Mob Psycho 100.
You know, your encyclopedic knowledge of roles and characters and shows come very handy in the industry. I'll tell you that, because I suck at remembering anything. But I will say the funny thing I was going to mention was that Niosi and I actually both auditioned for the same roles, I believe, for Roku, or for Zexal back in the day. That was one of the, I think, 3 times I'd actually bumped into him. But yeah, it was a funny twist of fate. And now sometimes he records here if he has certain auditions or whatever. So I've known him for over, or about 10, around 10 years, over 10 years. That's crazy. Anyways,
Yeah.
no, I thought it was funny.
Okay, you just put a smile on my face, Mick. Like, honestly,
Good.
that's actually a very funny of you meeting him like 3 times, and how you realize that he played your first ever character before you did. And that's
Well, we auditioned for the same role.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
my bad. It's just
No, that's all good.
but anyway,
Yeah.
How did it feel about playing Leone in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind?
So that one was definitely like, I feel I hate the idea of peaking early, but in terms of personal goals, that was definitely an early peak for me. I hadn't actually recorded anything with Bang Zoom at that point, so I really didn't think I was ever in the running for any kind of lead role in a show. I had auditioned for them a couple of times, and to be frank, one of them was a project that required mocap, so we had to do a live audition. And with a theater background, I would have thought I would have been prepared. But I guess my live acting chops, at least in this particular setting, were so rusty that I clammed up so bad. After that audition, I was pretty sure that I can't tell you what project it was for. It was not for JoJo, obviously, but this mocap project that I auditioned for Bang Zoom, it went so bad in my head, at least, that I never anticipated them calling me back again, ever. That was like my second audition for them too. And I was just like, I had friends that had been pushing my name since I'd moved to town. They were like, no, you got to check this guy out, all that stuff. And so after all of that, I got this audition and I stank up the room, in my opinion. But they did bring me back for JoJo, and getting that role, man, I'm telling you, I mean, that was a dream come true for sure. Uh, Definitely didn't see it coming. I reread that email like 20 times. It's a very short email, just says congratulations, you got the role. But I could not believe it. It was it was pretty crazy. And what's funny is that it's not funny, but what's interesting to me is that part 5 was one of the parts where I was really curious about how they were going to animate it, because I'd read it in the manga many, many years prior. And so seeing the action sequences, because there was a lot of action sequences. Part 4, it's basically takes place in the town. There's still action, but it's a little bit isolated. It's a little bit more like, hey, some stuff happens in a room, it happens in a house, it happens on a street. With part 5, I mean, they got the car chases and all these different locations and different things happening. I was very curious how they were going to animate it, and David Productions kicked its ass. I mean, it looked so good. It was so well done. They even rearranged parts. They just did so much great work with it, that being a part of it was kind of amplified. You know what I mean? It wasn't just being a part of a JoJo part, but just seeing how they evolved the anime. It was just really cool to be a part of.
See, so this is how you like about playing in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because I've seen that anime like a lot. I even got to interview some of the actors of the show, including my wonderful good friend of mine, Richard Epcar and Kyle Hebert.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have a lot of hustle, I'll tell you that. And honestly, that's something that I feel like I came to this town with a lot of hustle. And I feel like I may not be hustling as much as I could be. Um, but yeah, the hustle definitely makes a difference in terms of opportunities and meeting people.
Yeah, I see that. But anyway, how does it feel like playing Great Dog Demon in Yashamine, Princess Half Demon?
I love it. I mean, it's cool. A lot of the characters I end up playing are like, they're important to the story, but they don't have a huge presence on screen. So as cool as it is, and it is very, very cool, I don't have a whole lot of time with the character, you know what I mean? In terms of like, it's not like, ooh, I need more screen time. It's not that. It's just in terms of what my investment in the character is. I just, the amount of lines that I spoke as that character, the amount of time that I spent recording that character is minimal. And so I think as a symbol, like, what the character represents and what fans may appreciate about that character, that is awesome. Love that. But in terms of my own personal investment in those characters, it's not as big as, were I to live in in the voice of a reoccurring character over a period of time. You know what I mean? Getting to know more of the nuances and whatnot.
Of course, I understand that.
Yeah.
Because all I know is that I've seen that show, you know. Not
Mm-hmm.
only that, but I've also seen the one show I've seen like years ago, which is called Inuyasha, which is connected to that show, you know. Because on the
Yeah.
looks of things, you did very well playing that character, you know. Like
Thank you.
honestly, you're like the right fit to play that character, along with the especially when you got to interact with Erica Mendez, Kara Buckland, Crispin Freeman, and the others, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, it's what voice acting can do, you know, interact with everyone. Because it's kind of a thing.
It is and it isn't. I'm going to break it down just a little bit. A lot of times when people see a cast of characters, there's an assumption that there is some kind of interaction with these actors. And in some cases, there is. In Lego, we actually recorded everybody in the room for Lego City Adventures. The way that those sessions were run was that we would have anywhere between 6 to 9 people all recording in the room at the same time. When it comes to dubbing, I think mostly because it's dubbing and you've got like the screen in front of you and the way the setup works is that you do have individual sessions. And so like with the cast of JoJo, I didn't really run into any of the actors ever until like after the project. After the project, it was like, hey, yeah, you played. Oh, that's awesome. And then we, hung out a little bit and that was cool. But during the process, there wasn't a whole ton of that. And a lot of shows are like that. A lot of times you'll come in, you'll record your lines, and, based on your schedule, because everyone's got different schedules, you may or may never, cross somebody in the hallways or ever record with someone in the booth.
Quite
Yeah.
impressive and
Yeah.
interesting, actually. Because honestly, what you're telling me, that's an experience I'm beginning to understand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I should thank you for the info. But
Yeah.
anyway, what's so awesome about playing the Demon King in Melodia's body in the Seven Deadly Sins?
That was fun. It was a little confusing only because there are several actors that voice that character in the show just due to the multi-phase, nature of that character. And it was super fun. It's a very cool show and has some great actors in it too. I mean, a lot of these shows have great actors, but I just remember being like, oh, I recognize that voice. I recognize that voice. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was good.
That's very good of you, actually, because I've seen the show Seven Deadly Sins, and honestly, I'm glad they were able to bring you in, you know?
Yeah, it definitely, some of these characters, I don't even think I auditioned for it. I don't think I did. I think they were just, I think based on some previous projects and they needed, somebody to come in and do a thing. That's another thing when it comes to studios is that you are not always auditioning for things. Most of a lot of times, not most of the time, but a lot of times, casting directors, they kind of get familiar with certain actors, what they're capable of, the roles they've done in the past. And if they need to fill in, slots, a lot of times they'll just pull from the wheelhouse of their mind and bring in actors that they trust to cover some bases. And that was one of those.
I see. That's a very good thing to hear from you. But anyway, I've always wanted to say this, but what was your favorite part about being the voice of Yorichi Tasagani in Demon Slayer?
My favorite part about it was definitely the hype. There was so much hype. I mean, Demon Slayer is already, it alone is super hype, right? Like, I think when the movie came out, it like broke every box office record ever or some shit. I mean, it was obviously the fans of it love it. The animation of it is incredible. The cast of it is incredible. I mean, geez, the cast list on that thing is just insane. But I think the funnest part was just that this particular character hadn't really shown up much. They talk about him, he's referenced, but he's not like in a lot of it. And so getting to finally add a voice and, you know, seeing people's reactions, obviously it was a mixed bag, but it was fun. It was really, really cool.
I see. Now that's very good about playing that character because I've seen the show Demon Slayer, and
Yeah.
and to tell you the truth, I'm very glad my good friend Steve Staley was able to bring you in,
Yeah.
because all I know is that to tell you the truth, when you do that Yurichi voice, you know who you remind me of?
Who?
Your voice of your character reminded me of another actor in Demon Slayer who's also in it, and
Yeah.
that is Crispin Freeman.
I would trust, again, because of your encyclopedic knowledge of voice actors and roles. I'm gonna trust you that if you believe that sounded exactly like him, that it probably did sound a lot like him.
You say, you're like a second Crispin Freeman to me, Cause hey, it's the truth,
Cool. Well, I'll take it as a compliment.
Well, I'm glad. But anyway, oh, this one's my most favorite. But what's the biggest thing when playing Tenshiro Kanjanji in Bleach Thousand Year Blood War?
That one is super fun. That was one of those roles that I'd mentioned before where I didn't know a whole lot about it, got to record it, and then just had so much fun. Um, I chalked that up a lot to the direction as well. But that character is just such a goof. I mean, he's super serious, but he's also a goof. And yeah, no, that whole process of how it's directed and edited is it's hard for me. Like I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to talk about like certain details of like what happens in the booth on like in this particular scenario, because I know every studio does their thing. That said, what I'll say is this is that the way it is directed and edited in a very personal manner. And I have appreciated that a lot because there's a lot of playtime. There's a lot of, let's make this even more this. Let's amp this up. Let's go all the way. Let's make it more. I'm trying not to get too specific. But
Don't
yeah,
worry.
you know what? All I'll say is that it's a lot of fun. And I always really enjoy every session recording that character.
I see. So this is what your thing about playing the character, because I've been seeing Bleach Thousand Year Blood War recently. I even
Okay.
saw you being in that current episode of the dub, and
Mm-hmm.
you just pull it off with Dan Warren, and there are more episodes yet to come, because it will involve your character in it. But there's one more question I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
What's the most awesome thing about playing Husk in Hazbin Hotel?
Um, the best. If I had to name one, the best.
You
Well, I'm
can
not going to
always
say the best.
tell.
I'll just say, yeah, a few things. One is the fan base. The fan base is incredible, very, very passionate, very creative. Um, Obviously, what Viv created, and that's the other thing I love is just that it is just such a full world, and it's so creative. And obviously, a lot of people have wanted to be a part of it because of that, including the fan base. Not just the fan base, but what I meant was like the production crew and the people involved. Um, it's just such a fun project. It is, I wouldn't say that it is the most original in terms of like, oh, we have a show and, kind of, they've got complicated relationships and that we're dealing with hell and all that kind of stuff. It's not literally the first show to do that. But what to me it is it's very personal and it gets very flushed out. And the relationships are a big part of the focus, not necessarily like, ooh, we're in hell and everything's hell, and ooh, look at the action in hell. It's more of, just kind of the lives of people there and how they mitigate that. And I think that is original to me. I think that's very, very cool. But my favorite part, yeah, it's the fans. I love the character himself. He's a complicated mixed bag of a whole bunch of things. And yeah, just seeing it grow, seeing it from its inception to where it's gone now has been it's been incredible to see how far it's come.
That's quite interesting, because I've
Yeah.
seen that show along with Hell of a Boss, which is
Yeah.
a very cool thing, to see. Because honestly, if I was in it, I'd be doing a character that has a very unique dialogue, it matches my personality, be like this. When you rejected me, I feel very heartbroken. And now I've gotten her with me. And you know that too. Right, Blitzo?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to remember though is that you are going to be playing characters that are not you. In
Oh,
fact, a lot of the characters aren't going to be you. I mean, if you're going to play, maniacal psychopathic villains or, love-struck, geeks or whatever. I mean, there's just the whole range of it, right? And you just kind of have to be prepared to jump into the shoes of whoever it is. From acting school, there was a lot of preparation for roles. That was a big part of it. And I will say, when it comes to dubbing, a lot of times you don't have that time to really prepare that deeply. You can, watch the original anime. If they're doing like a simul dub, then a lot of times you haven't even seen, nobody's seen it unless you've read like the manga or something that it's based on. If it's an original thing, then that's just up to you and the director and the writer, obviously. Um,
of
so,
course.
so in terms of preparation, sometimes you just got to jump in there and turn it on, I guess. Obviously you have direction. That's going to help a lot. And then the words written on the page are going to help a lot. And the image on the screen is going to help a lot. So yeah, you have things helping you push you in the right direction to get like the vision, right?
Of course.
But yeah.
Yeah. You know, well, it's such an honor to finally meet you at last, Mick. And I hope,
Honor is mine.
yeah. Oh, of course.
But I have some questions for you, Seabass.
Just one, because it's almost running out.
Got it. In terms of the interview series, what is your major goal with the interview series?
My interviews? There
Yeah.
is one goal I have in mind.
Yeah.
To one day become part of to be casted one day into voice acting, since all the voice actors notice me as a real animated character. Now I can finally see myself on the actual screen as an animated character.
Cool. Well, I wish you luck with all of that. It is a tough road with a
Of
lot of
course.
turns. So I'm wishing you all the luck on that, bud.
Of course. I'll see you on Twitter, my friend.
All right, buddy. You have a good one, man. Thanks for the
You
interview.
too. Bye.
All right. Later.